Planning and managing money is an art and a science. How my wife and I budget and manage our money might differ from the best strategy for you. This course presents you with tools and evidence-based ideas to choose from, to use what you believe is best for your relationship. You and your partner must be on the same page. This unit focuses on how to talk about money with your partner. You will watch a series of videos, read a few articles, and download the money date cards to guide the conversation with your spouse.
Money scripts is the term that we've been using to describe these beliefs you have about money, many of which are inherited from your family. And we've done studies on this now with tens of thousands of people. And you know, your beliefs around money here, big shocker out there. Like what you believe around money predicts your income, your net worth, your behaviors around money, your credit card debt. And so it really is very valuable exercise for you to actually sort of dig in there and try to figure out what are your beliefs and assumptions around money. You know, we have tests to do that, but another way to do it is to just think back to what, you know, what are the 3 things your mother taught you about money? What are the 3 things your father taught you about money? What are your early experiences around money? What lessons did you walk away from related to those? How are they helping you? How are they hurting you? Because if you can shift your beliefs around money, and by the way, studies have shown that like ultra wealthy people have different beliefs around money than middle class people and people who don't have as much money. And so as a student, for me, of wanting to increase my net worth throughout my life to give my kids a better experience than I had, I was very curious in the psychology of wealthy people, you know, especially self-made wealthy people, people who were able to climb the ladder. Like people started out exactly where I did. Some people climb the ladder, some don't. And, you know, studies show that there's a difference in their psychology. And so to me,
which is what? Can you give us a specific example?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's happening is we're being lied to on social media around how rich people actually spend their money. And this is something I can get that really upsets me. I'm just going to be straight up with you.
Keeping up with the Joneses kind of mentality is just.
That's absolutely it. And so keeping up with the Joneses. So our studies have found that the ultra wealthy are the opposite of keeping up with the Joneses. It's really fascinating. So people are really focused on status around money. For example, if you ask them how much money they made, they will admit in a test, psychological test, they'll say, well, I'd probably tell you I make more than I actually do. Now, those people have less money and less net worth. The ultra wealthy people, they say, I would probably tell you I make less than I actually do. And that's a real mind bender because you don't see that on Instagram. You see people leaning up against Mercedes and flashing, you know, wads of cash. It's sort of crazy, but people think that's what people do, or they watch, you know, reality TV. They think, oh, that's what rich people do. That's actually not what rich people do. Those are people who are perhaps on that cycle of spending all the money they inherited, which is a common thing, or, you know, they're just social media people who get paid to do that, right? It goes back to the millionaire next door. Like most people who are millionaires in the United States, most are self-made. Most are employees, by the way. They're not entrepreneurs. They're just religiously setting money aside each month into that boring 401k. Yeah. We have hundreds of thousands of people becoming millionaires every year from those boring 401ks. So if you don't have one, get one, fully fund it. That's how most people are getting there.
How would you suggest that they prepare for that conversation?
Like 80% of people have not talked to a single soul about money in over a year. We don't have practice talking about money, so we can't do the entire budget in one sitting. It should be like, let's start small. Like, let's just talk about like how our families handled money growing up and see where we're the same and see where we're different and which ones we want to like throw out and never do in our own families and which ones are like, this is kind of cool. I wish we were kind of similar. Start there, like start small, then start with the dreams and goals in mind. And so you're not starting with the scarcity mindset, you're starting with this abundance mindset of like, this is where we want to go. And then you can start working the tangible steps.
Well, there's only one right way to do money. And if you can just convince your partner to do it your way, you'll have no problems at all.
Just forget everything.
I chuckle at these articles saying, you must have joint or separate accounts. I mean, the bottom line is, what matters is what you guys decide works as a couple. So that's the first thing. There is no like objective right way to do this. Okay. And step one is letting go of that and trying to like beat your partner in submission, with your money scripts and the right way to do it. But what I always encourage couples to do is sort of have the conversation that you had, I don't know, 4 dates in, 5 dates in, how many dates we should have that debate where you said, I don't know, like, do you want to have kids? Like, I mean, at some point you have these types of discussions. We never have those discussions around money. And so when I work with couples in conflict around money, I like to take whatever it is, this thing that they're fighting about, which actually I don't really care about at all. It's just, of course, it's just one of the 100 things you're going to have to work out. And I like to kind of rewind and so that you as a couple can sit down and understand do you even understand your partner's like beliefs around money and their upbringing around money and what their mother and father taught them and what their deepest fears are around money and what their aspirations are around money. And I've worked with dozens of couples, and by going back and having that conversation, and if you do a good job of listening, all of a sudden your partner's crazy kind of beliefs around money are going to start making sense to you. And I make videos about this because, couples who are married have the highest net worth. Like, it's actually a great hack for increasing your net worth is being married. Of course, you need to stay married. But one of the benefits of having a partner is that they can help balance out your craziness around money. And my wife has certainly done that for me. Like, she's like, hey, should we buy a couch? And I'm like, hey, lawn chairs are fine. Yeah. And I apparently I had an extreme position around money, which I wasn't very conscious of until I got in a relationship. And somebody's going, what? You only have 2 forks? And so we have the opportunity to balance each other out and be healthier. And that's what all the studies show too, is that your beliefs around money are actually healthier when you're partnered up. Huh.
So it's how do we create fun and excitement around these resources so that we can be intentional about where we're going and not necessarily just be stuck on where we've been. And it's hard to do that if we don't understand each other's needs, because then we're just stuck in a rut, as opposed to this process is a way of considering how as a collective and as individuals, we can create space to adhere to our values, to mitigate our fears and uncertainties as it relates to this process that is managing money as a household.
This is what I want you to do. I want you to schedule a meeting. Actually, it's better if you just spring it on them. Like, don't even tell them it's coming, but say, let's do a budget and we can examine each other's spending and try to cut out all the joy in each other's lives. And we're going to start with you. Okay. So let's sit down and see all the spending. Let's review all your spending this last month. And I can sit back and tell you don't need, come on, a hair dry. You don't need to color your hair. What are you doing? Like, look how much money we can save. Like, I'm being facetious, but this is sort of the budgeting experience a lot of couples have. Like, of course you don't want to sit down and do a budget. Your partner doesn't even like some of the stuff you're doing. And we get sucked into that trap. And of course you want to avoid the entire conversation. Like, what a terrible emotional experience that is. By the way, it's a terrible emotional experience for anyone, let alone with a couple who are doing that to each other. And so what I strongly suggest is you sort of flip the script on it and you do a spending plan. It's a little bit of a, mnemonic trick here, but doesn't that sound more fun? Like, hey, let's sit down and think about what matters most to us. What do we want? Okay, so you have money, you have resources coming in. Where do you want to allocate those resources? What excites you? Start identifying your top goals and see if you can align goals or at least support each other in those goals. And I find it to be a much better emotional experience. And if you can get more specific about those goals and visualize them, this is a great hack. We did a study where we had people do that, and we saw a 73% increase in savings behavior once you got really clear on your goals. And this was only just an hour of coming up with some like vision boards around these exciting goals. Activate your emotional brain in a positive way in your relationship around money versus a scarcity way where, you're frustrated, you're upset, you're not happy with each other. So I like to start with the spending plan, come up with a real shared, exciting vision of what you want money to do for you in your life.
So where you're spending the money, instead of just where you're taking the money away from the things you enjoy.
Yeah, that's it. And the emotional experience is like, we've already identified, these are our top 6 goals, and we share 3 of them, but a couple are yours, a couple are mine, and we're going to allocate our money in those areas. And then you go, okay, so now where do we want to make cuts? Because you've already identified what matters most. And it's a real fascinating sort of emotional experience, because you've just said all this other stuff doesn't matter as much. And so if you want to make sure that you're going to reach those goals, you're going to decide how much you're going to allocate each month toward those goals. And you can balance it out, on goals that you might not share. And then you can jointly kind of move towards cutting it. It's a very different experience.
We have a lot of planning meetings, and there's actually research showing that couples who have like 1 hour, almost like business meetings with their partner every week are happier. And we try to do that almost on a daily basis. We'll kind of look at our schedules, talk about who's going to do the morning feed, who's going to do the evening feed, going to do the pickup, do the drop off. And those kinds of decisions in our relationship are something that aren't fixed. And that if they do start to become fixed, we reevaluate on a weekly basis. So there's this idea of trading on differences. So instead of trying to like split all of your chores equally, you decide who likes doing which chore more. One person does all of that chore and the other person does none of that chore or less of that chore. My husband and I do this all the time, but it's not just like what we like more. It's like, who cares more about that thing getting done in a particular way?
Could you share your own definition of what financial infidelity is?
The sort of official language is that financial infidelity is an act of deception by a partner in a relationship where finances are combined. But I would further take that into everyday language of keeping money secrets from someone you love who has a vested interest in your financial life. If you're living your life with someone or having a financial relationship with someone that you love, that you care about, and you are keeping things from them because of your own shame or your own baggage, not because of their inability to manage money, that's a further explanation, I think, for me.
How big of a problem would you say financial infidelity, financial deception is among couples?
Statistically, it's pretty high. It's 43%. That's the people who've actually confessed to having ever committed an act of financial deception.
So what might be some of the biggest reasons that couples do cheat on each other with money?
38% say that even though they're in a committed relationship, they believe money should remain private. 34% are afraid of being disapproved of by a partner or spouse in a relationship where discussions of finance had already occurred. 33% were just embarrassed or fearful about their own financial situation, their own finances. 27% feared disapproval where they had not even talked about money. So they hadn't really had a lot of conversations about finances, money, budgeting, goals, things like that. But they were fearful for what would transpire in that conversation. So they just completely avoided it altogether. There may be just a lack of frequent and effective communication about money, that it's just something we don't talk about. It's something we don't engage on. Money is meant to be spent, not discussed. It's a means to an end. It's not building a lifestyle or about building a future together. Lois Vitt is a researcher, and she did some research years ago about financial values, your life values in terms of what informs your decision making. So are you a person who likes experiences? Like are you buying the ski lift passes because you want the experience? Or are you the person who likes to build sort of the environment at home? So you have the pretty decorator pillows and all the cool things about your house to make it cozy and comfy or pretty or attractive for company. And if you're on different places with that can cause friction, or you don't understand, why are you spending so much money on ski equipment?
From your research and from what you've seen, how can you work with your partner to rebuild this trust after this financial infidelity occurs?
Let's be honest, it's going to take time. It's going to take sustained transparency, being above board. It's going to take a commitment from both to stick to the goals you set together. I think the surprise that you're talking about, the bill comes and you're like, oh my, where did this come from? When you've had conversations, or you start to have conversations as prompted by whatever got you to the point where you're having a conversation, is agreeing upon certain kinds of goals. and certain levels of transparency and so forth. When there's a surprise, then something broke in the agreement. And so then you can go back to the agreement as a cornerstone for sort of moving forward. But it's going to take a commitment from both to stick to the goals. And then you're going to have to rebuild trust through conversation and transparency. And it's difficult, especially when there's been a severe pinch, an emotional sort of draining experience through the argument or the, I can't talk to you for a couple of days moment. Those are hard things to sort of push through, being able to push yourself to go back to it, and regularly, because some folks' instinct is to run.
As you move through this course, you'll recognize that we recommend the concepts that many folks break into 3 different categories, but using pieces of each, such as a zero-based budget, a pay yourself first budget, and then setting a 50-30-20 as a guide for what to save, spend, and invest, but not an absolute. Feel free to pause this screen if you want to look into the details of each budgeting strategy. Throughout the course, keep in mind these key common budgeting ideas. These are 4 ideas that you should refer back to as you're building out the budget and you're considering how to manage your money in a way that accomplishes the goals established in your budget with your spouse. If you needed, go ahead and pause the screen and review.